Hello, and welcome back to day 3 of Keys to Freedom. To quickly recap, last week we talked about artificial stabilizers, and that is those things that we look to instead of Jesus to give us that temporary fix or that, false satisfaction that we so crave. And what God is calling us to do is to lay aside those hindrances, lay aside those things that so easily entangle us into sin, and to surrender them to Him and let Him satisfy and fulfill us, because He is the only thing that can truly satisfy the deepest longing in our soul. And when we lay those things aside, He is going to give us what to put on instead, which is that godly character that we talked about and that godly wisdom and the fruits of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and faithfulness. And He is going to give us His righteousness that He died on the cross for. He died in order to give us His righteousness. So that's ours. And so let's lay aside those things and keep working on that process with the Lord. So transitioning back to today, the next 3 weeks, we are going to talk about some traps. So today, trap number 1 is I tried God and He did not work for me. So we tried God and it just didn't work for me. And I think that is definitely a trap, but it's a relatable trap because we have all been there. We have all felt that. I know I definitely have. Different seasons of my life, you feel abandoned. You're like, all right, Lord, where are you? So let's see what today's lesson has to say, because God, His word promises He will never leave us, and He is going to complete the work He has started in us. Okay. So sometimes when people commit their life to Christ, they want to see big changes in all areas of their lives immediately. Big changes can and do happen, but many changes take time. Many times, God's blueprint in dealing with His children is a process. And even if you think of creation, God He's the almighty King of Kings. He could have spoken the heavens and the earth into existence in just a few words, but rather He took His time. And he had a process in his creation of creation. He took His time in those 7 days. And I think what He wanted us to see in that is that, process is weaved into the very, existence of our human being and of our life, that process is part of, who we are and how He works. And everywhere we look, there is process, right? But so often we resent it and we try to avoid it by finding shortcuts to our destination. We are increasingly surrounded by quick fix, instant results, and same-day delivery solutions to whatever our problem is. And that's so true, right? We want the end result, but we are often not prepared to do what it takes to get there. We want the victory, but not the battle. We want the fitness, but not the training. It's not often that we get one without the other. And when I think of what it's talking about here, when I think of the word process, I think it's so powerful, because I think it's in, the process of what God is doing in our life is where we learn perseverance. And the reason for that is because in perseverance, in those times where, we're hitting our obstacles, we're hitting our daily challenges, we're hitting, those inconveniences and those offenses where, the Lord is calling us to step up and persevere in those things. It's in that very time where we have the ability to look at, the process itself and the call to persevere. We can look at that as an opportunity, right? As an opportunity to put into practice the principles that the Lord has taught us. So and what does that do? When we continue to put into practice the principles that the Lord has taught us, we learn perseverance, and that's just part of the process. And what does that do? That then prepares us for what God has next. And so, if you feel like you're circling that mountain, maybe it's because, you're still learning the process for that season. Maybe God is calling you to step higher, to, put into practice what he has taught you. And because it's that process where you're learning perseverance, because that perseverance is going to prepare you for where he has next for you. And I think there's so much power in that. Wow, there's a lot of P's for a lot of P words, but I think there's so much power in having that perspective. Because if you view the process that God is doing, with eyes of faith, with eyes of perseverance, eyes of preparation, then you are going to be more focused on it. So let's stick to that. And I think we're being called to embrace the process, embrace that. Embrace those times of those obstacles and those challenges and put into practice, the principles he has taught us. And I love this quote that one of my favorite pastors says, it's the small choices, the daily small choices that you make create the big impact and the big results that everybody wants. And I think it's so easy to want a miracle, and it's so easy to want that quick fix. I know I am so guilty of having that mindset, without a doubt. Amazon Prime, it's spiritually, we want to have Amazon Prime, right? But I think a lot of times our miracle is the process. Our miracle is what the Lord is doing because we are learning perseverance. We are learning his character, his nature. And what God is doing in the process is he's not abandoning us. He is there with us. He enters, the discomfort of our challenges. He enters the discomfort of our obstacles, and he is right there alongside us. And I think it's so easy to think that he's not there because it's hard, but really he's there. And, the story that I think of when I think of this lesson is, when Jesus walked on water, he didn't walk on water in the beginning of the journey. When the disciples first got into the boat, he actually wasn't there. He was up on a hill praying. He didn't walk on water when they were coming into the land. But what he did is he walked on water in the middle of a storm. He walked on water when everything was chaotic, and he was there. He was there in that middle ground, in the middle of the process, in the middle of what he called them to do. He told the disciples to go to the other side. He was very clear in what he said. And so he was clear in the beginning, and he was there in the middle, and he was there at the end. So remember that he is in the process of whatever you are going through right now. And what did he do when he was walking on the water? He spoke to the storm and he kept on walking. So, Christ lives in us, right? And so we can speak to that storm. We can put into practice those things he's taught us and persevere through that storm, knowing by faith that he is with us every step of the way and that he does not abandon us and he never will. And what it says here is process is how God builds us up. It's his way of growing us, his way of maturing us and drawing us closer into relationship with him. Process is how God builds us up. He lovingly and graciously walks alongside us. And I think that's so important to remember, because when we're faced with obstacles or inconveniences, we are called to take the higher road. We are called to trust the process. We are called to trust the fact that he is creating in us a new quality of trust, right? A new quality of trust in the relationship you have with him. And remember the scripture, Philippians 1:6 says, he who began a good work will carry it on to completion. And this is a scripture that a friend had given me, and I clung to it because I think it's so important to remember that he is there in the beginning when you enter into a relationship with him, and he is there along the entire journey, and he will carry out his process to completion. no matter what. His word says that, and his word is true. And I take that scripture not just for our life process, but even for the different seasons that he puts us in. There's always a process that we're working on with him. So just to remember that he is there every step of the way. He has not abandoned you. And if you felt like you tried God and it just didn't work, I dare you to try him again. I dare you to search him and seek him and dig in and to persevere and use the tools that are in scripture that he wants you to use, because it's in the process is where you're going to see your miracle. So trust that and believe that by faith. Have an awesome week.